Okay, Melanie, if you're ready, let me just do a few introductory comments and then we can get going. So just to remind everybody, please remember the rules of the game. Please engage with Melanie, but do it by typing in the chat box. Your screens and your mics will be muted, so please use the chat box. And please, it's intended to be an interactive session, not just a speech. So please engage with us. And I will moderate them, so I will interrupt Melanie with your questions at whatever seems to be an appropriate time. Our theme today is readiness of the local metal industry for the fourth industrial revolution. It's a follow-on from a conversation that Melanie ran with us a little while ago. I think the question through many people's minds is, yeah, we hear about 4IR and we're anxious about it, but how ready are we actually to deal with it? And there is some research which Melanie will talk about. Melanie, do you want to take over?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to turn my video off and put the presentation up. Once again, thank you for having me here. It's quite a privilege to be able to relay the findings from our research.
Melanie, you're not yet in presentation mode. Oh, now we see. There you go. There you are.
Okay. So today's presentation is based on research conducted by the Mercita Metal Chamber during the course of 2019. And after today, ASDSA will email you the executive summary, the research itself, as well as the presentation I'm going to go through now. I think it's important from the onset that I declare that the fourth industrial revolution will be referred to by myself as 4.0. And this is a concept of industry. So most of you attending will, I think, derive value as 4.0 is gaining momentum in and across South Africa's all sectors, all value chains, and it doesn't matter on the size of the organization. So 4.0 offers potential to contribute to resource efficiency, new industries, new jobs, innovative products and services, and new business models. These benefits are not without challenges to the labor market, education, and skills. Rapid change and technological advancements affect future patterns of productivity, competitiveness, and employment. So in our industry, if we don't harness the opportunities presented by 4.0, job losses will most likely accelerate and market share would be lost to global competitors that employ new technology. In my opinion, survival depends on its readiness to adapt and embrace 4.0. And the term 4.0, as I said earlier, is a concept of industry. It relates to smart factories, one that learns as it works and continuously adapts and optimizes its own processes accordingly. I think it's also important for me to tell you at this juncture, there is no comprehensive national strategy or support by government, and where there is, it's quite limited. There's also a lack of countrywide central strategies, perhaps a reason, put it to you, that organizations have not really adapted to the fourth industrial revolution. So what's the definition? Well, in our opinion, we define 4.0 as the following application of these 8 components. I don't have to go through each one. I think most of you are aware of each of these components. What I am going to highlight to you is since 2017 and up until now, cybersecurity has become really important. So it doesn't just affect our industry, it affects all industries. And that's the practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from any digital attacks. And as you know, in South Africa, digital attacks are on the rise. This slide is how we believe 4IR is impacting industries. And this slide was put together by Rizwan Janjua in 2017, who represents the World Steel Association. And basically it's talking and showing what the industry drivers are and the customer's needs and how that relates to data. So it's your internal sources, your external sources, and it's talking to data volume, data velocity, data variety, and data veracity. What's important for me on this slide is the delivery in full, on time, in specifications, now referred to as DeFotis. As we are all well aware, the acronyms just keep increasing. If we don't harness the opportunities presented, job losses could likely accelerate. And again, I reiterate, market share could be lost to global competitors that have already started employing these new technologies. It's also interesting, I think, to say to you here at this point that the 4IR depends on the industry in question. And I stress that these changes are taking place at a global level. So depending on the context, there will be additional local pressure that could influence how and when individual companies react to the global ones. Moving to the next slide. So this slide basically presents the quantitative findings of the application of 4.0 in 26 of the metal and engineering companies. What's interesting to note is some applications are low-hanging fruits, for example, the cybersecurity, the Internet of Things, and to some extent, system integration. These applications are very necessary, no matter any size of business. But unfortunately, we do still need to make investments in the more complex applications such as predictive maintenance, the additive manufacturer, simulation, and the robotics. So in my opinion, this indicated that in fact our industry is perhaps questionable when it comes to the application of 4.0 and the fourth industrial revolution. And some reasons why, which I'll state here, could, but are not limited to, the poor economy, lack of capital investments, labor disputes, unreliable and costly electricity supply, lack of business confidence, and policy uncertainty. So is our industry ready? And the answer is a complex one. It's yes and no. So based on what I showed you with the application of the components, and we look at the metal companies, you can read this for yourself, but basically we have a long way to go. And at this juncture, I also want to point out, as an example, TVETs use and teach, facilitate and lecture on new technology. A good example for me is the Boerland College in Worcester with their welding facility, which makes use of the robotic arms. And it's all well and good to send your apprentices there, but if they're back in the workplace and they're not using what they've learned or able to apply it, to what end? An interesting case study, which I want to highlight to you.
Melanie,
yes.
Before you go on from that, a question just from me, and if anybody else has questions, please type them in the chat box. So I think the question to my mind is things like IoT, cybersecurity, and so on are moving targets. So as I understand what you're saying is currently companies are saying that they are making use of cybersecurity, they are making use of Internet of Things. But I guess my question is, so how do we stack up against everybody else, given that this is a moving target, that there's going to be ongoing development? Are we close to being in the middle of the pack? Are we at the back of the pack, or are we close to the front? What's your take?
Well, that's quite a loaded question. And it depends. It really depends on what industry, what sector you are in. I'll give you another example. In the hotel industry, you know, door keys and access into the rooms and use in the rooms has gone from you using a key to now using a card or your fingerprint. So the technological advances are growing at a faster rate. And for us to remain globally competitive, I think we have a lot of catching up to do. In the metal and engineering industry, there's a variety of reasons, as I mentioned. Some are being used, some are not being used. Does that help? I think when I talk to the next case study,
okay, definitely shut up and let you get on.
It will give you a good indication. So the case study I chose, there are 5 that we cover in the detailed research, but in my opinion, Klockner is a very interesting one, specifically related to M&E, metal and engineering. They're the largest steel trader in Europe. And they now operate an online steel trading platform. What they did was they took a look at inventory, which is a burden for many of our companies. And they looked at how they could lessen the burden. So what they did was they developed a mechanism which drastically reduces that burden through an online mechanism. And this has evened out the balances between demand and supply. So when you read the case study, you'll see that the demand was always higher and they couldn't meet it with the supply. And this has just been a revolutionary transformation across the global steel industry, for one. So again, it depends on your company. How much are you willing to put into technological advances, or are you only prepared to catch up when you need to deliver the end product? From a skills development perspective, and I think that's what a lot of people are interested in today, for 4.0, one needs, and when I say one, a human being will need digital literacy and knowledge in the STEM areas. It will require learning to become a lifelong task to keep up. And maybe we need to look at starting early as primary school. Opportunities here for any providers and companies is the options of blended learning, mobile learning, and learning on demand. Companies will face challenges, in my opinion, in finding skilled employees to operate the new technology and work with it, but also for their existing workforce. And the skills development programs that we have now would need to be more aligned for upskilling, for reskilling, the concept of CPD, so your continuous learning, and a mindset change. And on that note, from a government perspective, I think the ultimate challenge when it comes to the 4th Industrial Revolution is that government, employers, labor, everybody urgently needs to co-create an actionable strategic plan. In other words, get it implemented. Let's not just talk about it, to help South Africa to a higher trajectory. And what needs to be done there is also more research, better case studies on what's worked, lessons learned, and how to take that forward. So in conclusion, Industry 4.0 is here, it's now. It changes the nature of work and how people work. It's evident there are several factors inhibiting the readiness for any organization to be involved in 4.0. And externally, those could be related to the poor economy, the weak currency, our outdated labor policies, and definitely policy uncertainty. And internally, for a company, lack of capital investment and skills development due to the weak market condition. So in a nutshell, in my opinion, there are also so many opportunities for adopting or adapting to 4.0. Companies will reap the rewards. There'll be higher growth, improved productivity, and better product quality, and everyone can benefit. I think we should never negate the fact that a human being is the conductor in 4.0. I've said here at the production value chain, but you will always need humans. So jobs will change and people will grow. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Please, time for questions. Firstly, Melanie, a question from me is, so one of the things that's very apparent with changing technology is the need to reskill people to deal with, as you say, to become more of a conductor rather than a doer of things. Are you, in the research, does it indicate that there's a lot of reskilling programs being run, or is it more around employing new people and getting rid of the people who don't meet that skill requirement? What do you see? What does the research show?
Shows both. So depending on the technology that will be used, or the systems, the data that needs to be.
Melanie, your voice is very distorted. We can't hear you clearly. Just try that again.
I'm saying it will depend on the organizational needs. So if they are taking on new technology, that reskilling would be based on brand new exposure. If it's reskilling on bringing people up because of the technological advances, that will also be part of reskilling. It will all depend on whether the company has the finances, the training budgets. And this is where the CETAs are important. For example, Merge CETA now offering areas for improvement when it comes to improved technology, etc. So the scope here, there is scope. So reskilling, yes, it's a definite, but it will depend on the nature of the organization and the availability of funds.
I'm still picking up a lot of distortion on your microphone, Melanie. Maybe switch it off and then try it on again. Any other questions from the group? I'm not seeing anything being raised. Okay, let's then move on. Melanie, thank you very much for the time for the presentation. People with a designation, if you want to get your CPD points, that's in the chat room. And please click on the link there. Great, then I think we are done for today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I'll send the slides to you this morning so that you can also share those, and you already have the research in the executive summary.
Thanks, Melanie.